Welcome to Vital 100, the podcast designed to take your health to the next level.
Would you like to know what you can do with your genetic profile and how important it is with your health? Well, this is our follow-up call with Dr. Charles Gant, and he's going to talk about some of the cases that he's used the genetic evaluation and follow-up treatment on, and it really is very impressive what can be done to improve your health when you know what your genetics can and cannot do. So I want to reintroduce Dr. Charles Gant. Hello, Charlie.
Hello. Great to be on.
Could you talk as a follow-up to your other presentation on the genetic evaluation? Could you just go over the importance of genetic evaluation and kind of a little bit of a history behind it and why it's so important for people's health?
Well, ever since I was in medical school, which was only about 20 years after DNA was even discovered by Crick and Watson, I was told the mantra of medicine, which is that every problem, disease, syndrome is caused by an interaction of genes and the environment. So you put those two together, or environmental stressors, things that stress us, which could be electromagnetic radiation, it could be toxins in the environment, it could be infections, could be anything metabolically that goes wrong with us. How does that interact with our genetic vulnerabilities? See? And the outcome of those two things is what determines whether or not we get well as quickly as we do or whether we get well at all. And now that we have the ability to look at so much of the genomic information, I can't imagine what it's like to live with only half a practice. We're treating the environmental stressors like infections or whatever, but not looking at the genetic side of the equation. So we're kind of doing half medicine. And we've only had the human genome for, what has it been now, 16 years or so, and it took 5 to 8 years to even start making sense of it. But we have made sense of it, and it can be incorporated into a medical practice. So one of the most important things that doctors can do to start with it, and one of the most important tests for everybody to get, if you're taking medication, is to do the pharmacogenetics, which is determining if you have the genes that allow medication to work at all. Some people break medication down so quickly because of their genetic makeup that it has no benefit for them. Other individuals break it down so slow that the medication can build up to very toxic levels and make them very sick or die. And since it's now been proven that deaths from prescribed medication is at least the third leading cause of death now, it's very important for doctors to be able to know that when they're prescribing a drug, that it's the right drug for the right patient. And it's very good for the patient to know. And I would just ask your doctor, how do you know that genetically I'm able to take this drug without it hurting me? Or maybe the drug doesn't work at all because I have the kind of genetics that can break it down too quick. So I'd start putting a little heat on the doctors and asking them that.
So this seems like a huge advance in overall health care when this is put into practice. So before we get into some of the very incredible cases that you have, could you just briefly explain how easy it is to do the test and how is it done to get someone's genetic profile?
Well, almost always they all come from a saliva sample. So the 23andMe, which is one of the platforms we use for one of the kinds of tests that we do, you just get the 23andMe test It's a saliva test. You go online and get it and spit in the container and send it in. Registered online some period of time, maybe a month, 3 weeks, it comes back. They won't tell you your genes. They're not allowed to scare the public, so to speak. But they will give you a link that for $30 you can go to an app, put in the link, and the link will pop out about, I don't know, upwards of 500 SNPs that we now can read like a book. And it's almost like looking in a crystal ball, where the person looks in a crystal ball and then tells you all about your life. So, it's almost always correct.
So a person does not have to go to a doctor to do the analysis or do the test. They can order it and take the test themselves and send it into the lab?
They can take the test. Now, the 23andMe people will summarize all the genes they find and they give you risk factors for cardiovascular or autoimmune disorders and cancer and so forth. Just general pointers. And, it's fun stuff. You can also find out if you have some relatives in Minnesota or something, genetically. They've done the test, you did the test, they know you're related.
Right.
It's kind of fun to do that, but it's simple to do. And when you do the MTHFR support, the app that spits out all the genes, then it might take a little work to figure them out. Now, you can look them up on Wikipedia. You can look them up on Genetic Home Reference, or you can come see a professional who knows how to interpret these and put them into context with your life. And the beautiful thing about it is the genes don't change. So this is a long-term prognosis, but we can change the expression of the genes in various ways, or we can mitigate the expression of the genes in various ways.
So you only have to take this test really once in your life.
Once, yeah.
And just before we get into a case, just kind of off the subject, is this the exact same thing that they do when they're trying to solve some of these criminal cases, to do a genetic evaluation?
Well, they look for certain genes that more or less are easy to address and easy to find and easy to type, so that they know that they have the genetic fingerprint of a person.
Right.
Yeah, that I don't do that kind of work, so I don't know what genes they're looking at. But it's the same idea that we have a genetic fingerprint that is so incredibly unique to each person that there's nobody in the world that has that particular fingerprint. Even identical twins, they don't vary in their basic genes, but they vary in what's called their epigenetics, the way the genes are methylated and so forth.
Right. So give us a case that really illustrates how valuable this is and how it's helped that person.
Well, it was a case I saw this morning. I can bring right up to date. And there's a very famous genetic variant called APOE4. There's an APOE2 and 3 and 4. And of course, we look to see if it's one parent giving you the variant or both parents. When both parents give you the variant, it's called homozygous. So I actually found, and I hadn't seen one probably for a year, but I found a patient with an APOE4 homozygous. They got the quirky gene from both parents. And it was like, stop the presses, because this gene can give you 20 times the risk of dementia and heart disease.
Wow.
You don't see very many, I don't know of any, in fact, that give you that kind of a risk or can change your life by that degree. So immediately, let's see, of course, when I do this, it's like looking in a crystal ball, and I say to the patient, how many people in your family have dementia? Of course, they said, there's about 4 or 5 of them. So one of the things you can tell people, first of all, is go tell everybody in your genetic tree to get tested for this. If they have ApoE4 homozygous from both parents, they will get dementia unless you take some special precautions about that. So now that's the gene, and then there are environmental stresses. And of course, one of the biggest environmental stressors are toxic metals.
Mm-hmm.
We've known for a long time that, because pathologists have studied this way back when I was in medical school, they just take slices from the brain with people who died from dementia and from Alzheimer's, and they see these little pinpoint areas of brain death, and right in the center of it is a hunk of aluminum. So this gene plus aluminum equals Alzheimer's by the time you're 50. Probably that'd be my guess. And of course, other toxic metals, lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury, and so forth, could pose a major risk as well. So this would be great, Bob, for dentistry. If a patient says, how soon should I get my mercury fillings out? So you say, well, get a genetic report, and we'll make an appointment. You get the genetic report, you see an ApoE4, and say, get them out yesterday.
Right.
Because it's just so critical. And then major. So I set up the patient with major detoxification protocols, lots of sulfur foods, Epsom salt baths, various supplements to bind the toxins, like Zeobind and so forth. And there's been a national shortage of DMPS, which is an intravenous chelator of mercury.
Mm-hmm.
The patient had a little bit of mercury, not too bad, but see now, if there's any mercury with this gene, you got to get it out, because it's so deadly.
So what you were saying with this gentleman is that because he had such a genetic proclivity to have brain dysfunction, Alzheimer's, that he needs to take every precaution and be proactive in making sure that the other things that might manifest this, he has to abide by, or he's going to more than likely get Alzheimer's.
Guaranteed. Early.
Wow.
Yes.
So that really is a huge step in terms of health. And, that isn't just the only gene. There are other things that we all have that make us more susceptible than others.
So we all have several million of these SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, which makes us all so diverse and so different. It's just amazing. And most of them, as far as we can tell, the vast majority of them, don't do anything different. It's like reading a book, and you come to a misprint in the book,
mm-hmm.
and you recognize right well that they didn't spell the word right or something, and you just keep going. But, if the book is going along and it says the person was struck dead by a lightning bug, as opposed to lightning, that changes the whole plot of the book.
Mm-hmm.
See? And that's what it does. So some of these, as far as we know, there are some several hundred. We're probably moving towards 1,000. We're getting into the 1,000 to 2,000 range, where there is unequivocal evidence that certain SNPs play a role, no question about it, in changing changing the way we express symptoms or change our vulnerability to various kinds of issues or problems, and especially when there is an environmental stressor involved.
Right. Do you have a case where it involved an alteration of a prescription or a medication they were taking that they shouldn't take?
Oh, we see that all the time, sure. We see it very commonly. Like I had a patient the other day. Well, I checked a patient the other day who was taking Adderall, which is an amphetamine.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, the gene that processes the enzyme that breaks down Adderall was perfectly set. It's having side effects to Adderall. And see, I don't know if the side effects are because genetically is intolerant, or is he taking too much? So you don't know. But it turns out that this person was genetically attuned to taking Adderall. So I know it wasn't anything to do with the genetic makeup. So it's reassuring. You have to look for something else then.
Right. It really seems to direct more specifically and more effectively what your treatment as a health practitioner should be for this patient. Absolutely.
Right. And I saw one today, a little girl who had Lyme and had white blood cells were affected, and I thought all along it was the Lyme doing it, because white blood cells can be infected by Lyme, and the spirochete then kills the white blood cells, and then the immune system is affected. Well, we finally got to the genetic stuff, and it turns out that there probably is some Lyme, but she has inherited immunodeficiency. She has an ADA. She had 2 homozygous ADA genes, which genetically can make you immunodeficient. So it's inherited, not acquired necessarily. See, it's acquired if the germ gets into your white blood cells and wipes them out. So she had both. And she's sick all the time, and she's getting colds all the time, because her immune system, this precious little girl, 8-year-old, her immune system is affected by both a genetic and an environmental stressor, both.
So with someone who is genetically has a weakened immune system, you'd have to give her a lot of things to artificially strengthen her immune system.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first time you get an infection, you don't wait more than a couple of days to start the antibiotics,
mm-hmm.
because antibiotics could tear her up, and it has to be taken a lot more seriously. I'm going to look. The family didn't have much money and had terrible insurance, so otherwise I would look into getting human IgG injections to bring her antibody levels up. We don't have that option available for us.
Right.
So I'm just making sure every little thing is dealt with. Everything's battened down, because this is more than just Lyme. This is Lyme and an inherited immunodeficiency.
Right.
It makes her that much more vulnerable to the Lyme.
So in summary of this, I mean, obviously doing a genetic profile or testing would be good for every single person. Every person, but that's not going to happen, at least for now. Who are the people, say the 4 or 5 groups that would mostly benefit and really should think about getting a genetic test?
Well, the young and the old, people who are obviously sick, can't explain it. You know, we triage, it's like an emergency room. You triage people who needs the care right away. So the sickest people should be assessed right away. They need it the most. Well, ultimately, everybody should take advantage of this.
Or how about people who, that have a lot of very sick people in the family? This would probably be a very important test that they should take so that they're less susceptible to these health problems that their whole generations are suffering from.
Sure. Cancer. If you've got breast cancer running through your family, like the BRCA genes, you want to know. That's what Angelina Jolie, she tested to see if she was vulnerable. So that was very, very important to find out. There are panels for cardiovascular disease. There are panels for cancer. So our cancer panel is about 40 genes that should be known, and the family that has cancer or certain types of cancer running through the family, they should know what's going on, because you can at least take measures to catch the cancer as early as possible if it should develop. So you might want to do an ultrasound, something non-invasive, every year. If you got 5 people with pancreatic cancer, or if you have a gene for it, then you would want to get the ultrasound or get some kind of diagnostic work done on a regular basis.
Right. Would it make sense that if a lot of people in a family have one particular type of illness, let's say pancreatic cancer or breast cancer, if one person did it, is it a moderately good assumption that everybody has that gene modification and should probably do a lot of the same preventive measures?
No, it's a statistical thing. So you never know when you get your 2 sets of genes from both. You get one from one parent, one from the other. You never know how the mix is going to go. So you could have a sibling that has nothing, and you could have the most severe part of it.
Right.
Well, you just never know how things are going to mix, but everybody has, a dozen at least serious, homozygous, common, important, modifiable genes. I don't see anybody with less than a dozen.
Right. So it makes sense that everyone should get this, and the fact that genetic testing now is so inexpensive to what it used to be a couple of years ago that there's really not much reason why you shouldn't get this test. Everyone should get this. Yes. So, very good. Well, this is
Thank goodness for free enterprise. The genes that cost $10,000 are now costing 25 cents.
Wow.
Companies are in competition with each other.
Amazing. Well, this is very exciting. We will certainly get your contact information. What is a good contact information for you if you want people to inquire more about this?
Well, the best contact would be NIHA. So NIHADC.com.
Okay.
And 202-237-7000, which is the main number for NIHA. Then extensions, the operator can find somebody on the Gant team.
Okay.
Right now, extension 111, extension 135, they can usually hook up with one of the coordinators on my team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gant. This is
Enjoyable.
Very important information, and it really is going to change the whole practice of healthcare, more and more as we go through and identify all these different genes.
I saw a young doctor the other day that we went through the genomic testing.
Yep.
25. I'm so jealous because that doctor is going to live to see a renaissance in medicine.
Wow.
And it's going to, we're just starting it now. We got enough that we can make a big difference. But they're going to see the medicine is not going to look anything like it looks today in 30 years.
Wonderful. Well, you are certainly a pioneer, and it's my pleasure to work with you and to be able to help you get this information out. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care. And for our audience, I hope you have gotten a lot out of this information, and I want you to always remember to enjoy the journey. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Vital 100. Please check out our website, vital100wellness.com, for other ways to listen to our podcast, as well as additional health resources. If you have questions for Dr. Bob, or if you have feedback or recommendations for the podcast, please send an email to info@vital100wellness.com.